We've got my Subaru BRAT here. We've got the engine and transmission and crossmember out and front suspension. And we're ready to start putting EA82 stuff in. It's going from a 4-speed, the original 4-speed transmission to a 5-speed dual range. And that transmission is right here. So the idea was to put the original 4-speed crossmember onto the 5-speed transmission, and then it would bolt easily into the car. The problem with that is the bolt holes in the transmission mounts aren't quite in the same spot. But we found that if we really flex the rubber suspension or transmission mounts over, it'll line up. It's just kind of like not very happy looking, but it works. So we're gonna run it like that for now, and if it becomes a problem, we'll deal with it later on. We'll build a real mount. So these little guys are our 3-inch lift blocks for the transmission crossmember. They will go right in here. Originally this crossmember bolted directly to the frame, but this will space it out 3 inches to help us lift the car 3 inches. Okay, you can see we've got the transmission lift blocks bolted into place now. There's one, there's the other one. And I just bolted on these crossmember lift blocks, which are also a 3-inch lift spacer, the crossmember for the engine to sit on. And now I'm going to try to lift the crossmember into place. So there's the EA82 crossmember. It has the EA81 manual steering rack added to it. And to do that, it was actually pretty much a bolt-in operation, even though I had read that we were going to have to take a notch out to make this fit. We may still notch this out a little bit to give a little more clearance right here, but it basically just bolted right in. And so now what I'm going to do is slide it under the car using the jack and try to jack it up into place. And the concern here is that this crossmember is like an inch wider than the original one, so the bolt holes aren't going to line up. So I'm going to jack it up into place and then mark to drill holes in the lift blocks that will be offset to let the crossmember mate up with the frame here. Okay, one thing that does deserve a little bit of a mention is to fit this lift block, we had to cut a little notch out of the edge of the frame right there, to the edge of the, what is that? That's the mounting bracket for the radius rod. So we had to cut a little notch to make the lift block fit, and we also ended up having to cut a triangle corner off of that transmission mount there. To be clear, if you weren't using lift blocks, neither of those things would have been necessary. But with the lift blocks, we had to do that to be able to get everything in place. And also, I am slightly concerned about the clearance right here. So when the engine slides in here, previously the engine was sitting against this frame rail and it was very close, especially on this side. And now it's going to be an inch lower, so I hope it's still clearancing against this, because if it's against this, it's not going to fit. But if that happens to be the case, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Probably just by cutting this corner off and boxing it in. Okay, I've got my crossmember jacked up into place for sort of a test fitment. And what I'm finding, I've got a little bit of a problem here. Let me brighten her up a little bit. So you can see that the crossmember is wide enough that the bolt holes on this side aren't catching this lift block that I need them to. And if we go to the other side, they are just as wide over here, so they're not catching over here. So what needs to happen is the lift blocks need to be spaced out. The good part about that is that's going to solve my clearance problems that I was worried about in here, because these are going to move back. The bad part is there's a flange on the frame rail right here, that prevents that from happening. So I'm going to have to cut this off right here. Do something like a notch up, across, and down. Alright, this is looking a lot better on the inside now. You can see my lift block is more flush with the flywheel, or with the frame rail now. So I don't think I'll have any problems with the motor clearance. And you look at it from the wheel well side, and you can see it's sitting right up in that notch that I made. So I think I'll mark the bolts in the top of the lift block and drill those holes. So I realize I haven't actually shown these blocks off yet. So it looks just like a piece of 3-inch tubing, but there's actually a central column in there. Let me brighten the picture up a little bit. See, there's actually a central column in there of 2-inch tubing, 1/4-inch wall. And the reason for that is I was a little worried that this wouldn't be strong enough to prevent it from buckling over and crushing. So that basically makes it crush proof for this application. Okay, and here's my EJ22 engine. Hopefully tomorrow or Sunday I can get someone out here to give me a hand and we'll put it back in the car. But for now I'm just going to pull the intake manifold off because it's kind of ugly looking. I want to give it a fresh coat of red, and the engine will just be easier to install without it in the way. So we're going to pull the intake manifold off right now. Now if I can show you this pipe I just pulled off, this hose. Let me brighten the image up a little bit. This guy right here. This fits onto the back of this water pipe and circulates hot water through the IACV and throttle body to keep it from freezing up. I just discovered that it was splitting and leaking slightly, and probably to get worse in time, so it's a good thing I pulled this off and looked at it. Alright, and here we have our block with no manifold, so that'll be a little bit easier to wrangle around to get in the car. You can see I stuffed some blue shop towels in all the intake ports to keep crap from falling down in there while I have the manifold off. And the manifold itself is over here. So the task now is just to remove all of the stuff from it so that I can have a bare manifold to paint.